In this video, we're going to continue talking about special angles formed by parallel lines. So just to remind you, we're talking about two parallel lines cut by a transversal. And if we knew we had that situation, then we knew that any of our special pairs of angles were either congruent or supplementary. So we're going to look at the converse today. So we have special angles on parallel lines day 2. And let's look at a conditional statement. So a conditional statement is just a statement in the form of if this, then something else. So our statement here says, if you have visited the Statue of Liberty, then you have been to New York. So let's look at the two parts here. The first part, you have visited the Statue of Liberty. We have the if clause. We like to call this the hypothesis. All right, and then over here we have the stuff after the word then. You have been to New York. This is called our conclusion. So we have hypothesis, we have conclusion. So now what we want to do is we want to write the converse. So in the converse, we take the hypothesis and the conclusion and we switch them around. Now, since we're dealing with sentences here, sometimes you have to change it around a little bit so that it makes sense. So let's switch these around. So if, now I'm going to take the conclusion from the previous statement and make it the hypothesis. If you have been to New York, then, all right, we'll take our original hypothesis and that becomes our new conclusion. You have visited the Statue of Liberty. All right, so let's take a look at the truth of both of these statements. Our original statement, if you have visited the Statue of Liberty, then you have been to New York. Well, the only way you can visit the Statue of Liberty is if you've been to New York, so that's going to be true. Let's take a look at the converse, though. If you have been to New York, then you have visited the Statue of Liberty. Well, that's not necessarily true, because you could go to New York and not go see the Statue of Liberty. So that's going to be false. So sometimes the converse will be true, and sometimes it will be false, so you'll have to figure that out. All right, so let's take a look at one of these examples. We want to write the converse of the true statement, so they're telling us that the original statement is true. Then decide whether the converse is true or false. If false, provide a counterexample. So remember, a counterexample is just an example of why it would be false. All right, so if an animal is an owl, then it is also a bird. All right, so when we do the converse here, we're going to have to switch things around and rewrite it a little bit differently than just switching the two, the hypothesis and the conclusion. So if an animal is a bird, then it is also an owl. So there's our converse. So they're telling us, remember, the original statement is true. Now we have to decide if the converse is true. If an animal is a bird, then it is also an owl. So the statement would imply that all birds are owls, and we know that they are not. So our counterexample could simply be something like false, because the bird could be a cardinal, right? So there's one example of why our statement is not true. All we have to do is provide one example to show that it's not true. All right, so then you'll go ahead and finish the rest of those. And we talked about this in the notes the other day, the converse of the parallel lines conjecture. So if two lines are cut by a transversal, notice that they're not parallel yet. If two lines are cut by a transversal to form a pair of congruent corresponding angles, congruent alternate interior angles, congruent alternate exterior angles, supplementary same side interior, and exterior angles, so supplementary same side interior and exterior angles, then the lines are, so now we know if any of these conditions are true, the lines have to be parallel. So again, this is the converse of the parallel line conjecture that we talked about the other day. That one said if we start out with parallel lines, then these things are true. And now when we flip that around, we're starting out with the congruent angles or the supplementary angles. Then we can show the lines are parallel. All right, so that's the end of this video. As always, if you have questions, make sure you get those answered. And we will see you in the next one.